Hi everybody, welcome to the webinar. I'm Ryan Irvin with Unanet's Customer Success Team. Today we are going to cover the topic of optimizing resource allocation in Unanet. If you have questions, please type them into the questions box on your webinar dashboard and we will review them all at the end. This webinar will be recorded and will be available online within a week in case you want to review it again or share with someone else on your team. All of our webinars are located on our Knowledge Center. You can find them by typing the title of the webinar in the search box. If you experience audio or visual issues, please try leaving and rejoining the webinar or try using a different audio option. I'd like to give a quick recap of the customer success role. Your customer success manager is your main point of contact within Unanet. Our role is to help our customers optimize their use of Unanet, as well as provide general account support. This includes communication on renewals, new products, events, etc. Please feel free to reach out to your customer success manager for any Unanet questions. If you don't know your customer success manager, please contact our general email at csm@unanet.com. I'd like to introduce our presenter for today. We're happy to have Sheila Morton from Unanet University to present. Sheila, are you ready?
I am here. Right, I'm hearing a little bit of feedback on my side. Are you guys okay? All right,
Yeah,
sounds great.
I'll mute myself.
Okay, no problem. All right, welcome everybody. Hope everyone's having a wonderful, awesome week. Like Ryan said, my name is Sheila Morton and I work on the Unanet University team. And this is my little helper for the month. This is my little granddaughter at the birthday party. But for today, we want to talk about optimizing resources. And so what I thought I would do is maybe try and present this in a very simplistic way that we could all take a look at and answer some of those key questions that we ask ourselves as project managers. Questions like who needs to get to work, what's actually on the contract, what are we supposed to be doing, when can we actually get started? So those people that we know are available, when can we actually get them started? And then as the project gets moving forward, how are we doing on the project? What's going on with our utilization? Are we actually optimizing our people? And then ask ourselves, why do we do all of this? Why do we go to all of this effort and this planning effort to get the right people on the right tasks to do the right work? Why would we do that? And so what we're going to do is we're going to step through each of these areas. The system that we're going to use is just one of our demo systems. What I'm using is Gus Lead, and I actually have him in as a project lead. And I've toggled back and forth whether I put him as a project manager or a project lead. However, I believe I've got him set up in here as a project lead, but I'll be so happy to explain to you which areas of the system we work with when Gus is a project lead versus when he needs to be a project manager. All righty. A little bit about terminology. One of the things I traditionally find is that we all speak different languages when it comes to talking about the same thing. So sometimes when we're talking about plans or we say the word budget, that might not mean the same thing to everybody. So what I'd like to try and do for us is just level set this particular webinar so that you understand what I'm talking about when I say certain words. So when I'm talking about the word plan, this is a term that we use in Unanet called your soft booking. So this is like our strategy that we're going to use to manage the project. A lot of times you see this in our proposals, or this is the plan that we're going to actually get to get the work done. When we do plans inside Unanet, we actually can't do timesheets or expense reports against them. Okay, so this is why we call it a soft booking. It actually doesn't impact our actuals or any authorization to do work. So you're going to hear me say the terms labor plans or expense plans. However, when we move those plans over to the hard booking, that would be the work authorization, where we actually allow people to charge their timesheets and we allow those expense reports to be created. The terms you're going to hear me say are people assignments and then expense budgets. So those are the terms within Unanet that help define the term budget as I'm explaining it in the webinar today. And then finally, I think we can hopefully all agree on the actuals. These would be our actual timesheets and our expense reports that would actually be charged by the users. And you're going to hear me say things like actuals or timesheet entries or expense report charges. So hopefully that helps with a little bit of the terminology as we get moving forward. Please keep in mind, I teach the project management portfolio license, and that's the license that I work with primarily. And as a project manager in my prior days, I've always learned, through that PMBOK, project management body of knowledge, a book of knowledge, that there's 5 phases that every project goes through. So from initiating and planning, executing, monitoring and controlling, and closing. So all of the material that I'm going to share with you today is going to be taking a look at everything through the eyes of the project manager. And in Unanet, I try to use the project lead role as much as possible, out of respect that the project manager role has an enormous amount of access to fields within the database that we might not traditionally ask our project leads to manage, things like total value and funded value and some of the start-stop dates on a particular project. We might want to reserve that role to the project manager and then allow our project leads to do everything else. So I keep that in mind when I'm working through here. And of course, as a project manager, every day our life is all about, can we manage a project? Can we create a quality product or service, and can we do it with a fixed amount of time, cost, or scope? That iron triangle that we learn about, and that while other things may change, these things do not change, and we are constantly being required to work within these parameters. So that's what the boundaries of what we're going to be talking about today, and we're going to be talking about project management in reference to managing our resources and optimizing those. So we asked the question, who needs work? Now I'm going to share with you a few slides to kind of show you what I'm going to do today, and then I'm going to turn the PowerPoint off and we're going to get into the system. So you're going to have an opportunity in the next 3 minutes to see what we're going to talk about for the next 45 minutes, and hopefully you'll choose to stay on with us. But this will give you an opportunity to make a good decision on if this material is something that's going to be of value to you. So we're going to talk about who needs work. We're going to go over the headcount report. I'm going to share both a line version and a chart version. We're going to take a look at it by plans and by budgets. We're also going to look at skill sets and see what we need on a project and how we can maybe find who's available for that. We're going to take a look at the contract. We're going to look at the project profile. We're going to look to see what labor categories we are supposed to be supporting. We're going to take a look at how long our project is, maybe look at some of the notes in there. Then we're going to take a look at, once our project is set up by somebody who has that project manager role, we're going to take a look to see what that revenue and funding summary report looks like when there are no plans, no soft bookings in there, no resources have been put on the project yet. We're going to show you what that looks like. I'm going to explain 2 very key fields, one called backlog and one called remaining funded. Those are going to be very helpful fields as you look at this particular report. Then we want to say, well, when can we start? When do we get to start the work? We're going to take a look at that resource allocation report, and there's actually 4 versions of it, 2 line versions and 2 chart versions, and then within that, we have the opportunity to drill down into people or not drill into people. So lots of options, same report. I'm going to share that with you a couple different ways. We'll look at some of the cool features that are on there to kind of help us tailor that report so that it works for us. And then hopefully I have some time. I actually want to show you the people planner. I might have to skip over some of that, but hopefully I'll get able to show some of that for you. That people planner is an extremely powerful tool within the system. And then we'll also take a look at some multiple plan sets. So for example, if we need to take a look at, we set up our plans, we can take a look at those through which dashboard you want to look at. I'll show you 2 reports that we can look at for that. But then this multiple plan set. So when we're looking as a project manager, we might want to look at different scenarios, or maybe when we get into the middle of a project, our customer comes back and says, hey, you know, I need to add $100,000 to the project. What can you do for me? You might want to be able to put in another set of plans and then compare that against your future one. And then, of course, sometimes we always hear that word about reforecasting, rebudgeting, and that multiple plan set is an option to do that for us within the system. We will surface on this particular topic here. There are some other entries in the Knowledge Center and some other webinars that we can share that really drill down into plan sets. But we'll talk about those a little bit today in referencing how can we optimize our resources. We asked the question, where are we now and how are we doing? So these actuals start coming in. Where are a couple of the reports that we can take a look at, looking at actuals? What can we do as a project manager when we start seeing things, we start looking at the actuals for our people? What can we do with that? And then we ask ourselves at the end of the day, why do we optimize? I'm going to share 2 very valuable reports to you. This, again, is that revenue and funding summary report. This time we'll look at it with actuals plus your future work authorizations, those labor, people assignments, and those expense budgets. We'll look at that and see, am I going to finish my project on time and within scope or within the money that I have available? We'll look at that report. And then another really nice report that I love is the cost summary and status report. We will talk through that one and show you some of the powerful features within that particular report. All right, so that is the high level content that we're going to share today. I'm going to go ahead and pull up the system. We won't come back to the slides for hopefully about 30 minutes or so. All right, so let's go ahead and we get started with this question about who needs to have some work done, right? So we're going to take a look at the headcount report, and let me see if I've made sure that Gus is, what is his role right now. So I also want to share with you, if you want to drive in your own system, I will certainly work to slow down slow enough so that you can follow along. If you find that you're getting lost, please go ahead and stop and just listen to the webinar. This will be recorded, as Ryan had shared, and we will have that released to you guys at some point in the very near future. Ryan will give you some more information about that when we finish. So follow along if you need to, and if you can, and if not, at least listen to it and make sure that we can look at it again later. This information will be available to you. So Gus's role, I did. So I went ahead and changed him back to a project lead. So we're just going to look at his all of this work as a project lead. And I'm going to go back to my home dashboard here. So the first one I told you we would get started with is the headcount report. Okay. Now I'm going to go through the long way so we can see where these things are. But under our reports dashboard, under the people section, we see that we have a headcount and a headcount bar chart. Notice under the resource section, we have those same two reports. The only difference between this section and this section is your access, your organizational access, whether you have the manager or the viewer role gives you the permission to see these reports. So you can see the same information here, you just would not be able to drill down and take a look at the people, all right? So we're gonna go ahead and take a look at the chart version first, and I've gone ahead and saved myself one here. So all I've done is say all of the people I can see. Here's one that typically trips people up when we first get started. It defaults in, it says my primary approvees. You wanna make sure that it's all the people that you can see, because you might not be one of those approvers for your staff when you're logging in. And then the other thing that I took a look at, I want to take a look at this month over month. This is that periodic report that we get when we're in the portfolio license. Okay, and I think I forgot to mention that to you earlier. Yes, the system that we're using has the portfolio. It has actually the full suite, but it's the portfolio license features that are going to be highlighted for us today. So I'm going to look at this month over month, and I'm going to take a look at it for the current year over 12 periods. I'm going to go ahead and take out my TBDs. We're not going to talk about our ghost resources or those to be determined resources. I'm just going to show my plans first, and I'm going to show it in full-time equivalents. And I'm going to go ahead and click on the Run Report button. So from this headcount report, I can take a look and see, without knowing the details, I can see that I have some planning records in here, but this is what capacity, this is the people that are available to do some work. They have some sort of capacity. So you can see I have a lot more plans than I have people available to do the job. Right? So this would be a healthy pipeline concept. We'd want to have more plans in the future. Now, please disregard the actual dates. I just use this data to show a representation of what we could look at. But for the capacity here, let's go back and take a look and say, okay, well, I've got a lot of plans in there, but when plans, people can't actually charge time against plans. So let me see what I've done for my budgets. And here the term is budget, and what we mean here is it's going to be those labor people assignments. We're going to rerun the report, and you can see I still have more plans than I do budgets, and I have people, I have more work than I have people. Right? Do you see the representation there? Okay. Let's go ahead and take a look back at it again. And in here, there's an option. We could have chosen to do our leave as well. You could have thrown in your leave if your people are doing leave requests, and then that would be able to show on that particular report. So we took a look at it with the plans. I want to show you the skill set. So let's take a look at it through the skills. Same report. Now I have a little one that I have filtered down. What I did is I'm working on a particular project, and I have, let's see, I want to take a look, and I want all of my people that are doing, what is it? They're all doing Spanish. I'm working on a project that's going to need Spanish speakers, and I need to have some folks that know SQL. All right, so what I did is I used my wildcard characters there, and I pulled all those over, and this is the list that got filtered for me. And if I look down here and I say, okay, I need somebody that's going to be a Jedi Knight in SQL, and then I don't really care what type of Spanish skills they have as long as they have some sort of Spanish skills for me. And we're going to go take a look at this. We scroll down a little bit more here. I want to show all of my plans and my budgets, and I'm going to take a look at this for my current month and looking out 12 months. Now, when I'm looking at this report, know that you and I are looking at this together, and what you can see very clearly just by the pictures is that we're missing some information. We have a lot of people, what we call on the bench. These are people that are available to do work. They have capacity, but you see that they have no plans and they have no budget. So if I was trying to work on a particular contract or project that needed somebody with these particular skill sets, I could very comfortably say that there's people in here, and if I clicked on that link and drill down, I can see that my users Gavin and Greg have those skills that I needed. Okay, so I'll go back through that really quickly just so we hear. And there's one piece of information I wanted to share with you. Let me see. Let's go to, I'm going to open up another tab. And on this one, if I wanted to see what kind of skills I had available for me, there's a report. Yeah. So here I ran the people skills profile report. And if I just want to see all skills and see what people have, see what I have access to. Now, mind you, again, see, I didn't change this to begin with. My primary approvees, and it's going to show no data. And so some of the reports default in at primary approvals. You want to make sure to keep in mind that if you're not one of those users that has approving you, they're not your direct employees, you want to see all the people that I can see. And I'm going to leave this sorted by person and skill type. Look at it like this. Just run the report and I see Gus and Gwen and Gavin. I might not know those people. Maybe I'm a new project manager. I don't know who those people are. Instead, I could take a look at the report by skill type and skill, and then person would be the final piece of information. What I really care about when I'm looking at this right now is I've got a contract that says I need to have a Spanish with MySQL. So then if I can look at it here under my language skills, I can see Spanish. Okay, Spanish, I've got a few people that have that. And then I can see under my database, I have some MySQL. So I can take a look at the skills profile to see if I have those people in the organization by their skill type. And then when I go over to run my headcount report and then I run it here, then I could see what kind of capacity they have. And I could tell that on this one, Gavin and Greg have those two skills. Oh, notice Greg only has 50% capacity. So even though as a project lead, I don't have access to Greg's detailed information, I can see that his capacity is only 50%, suggesting that he's not a full-time equivalent. He's probably one of those 20-hour people or one of those folks that is less than full-time. Alrighty, let's go take a look at what's on contract. So now that we know a little bit about how to find people using that headcount report with some of the different options we have there, let's go to the project. And I have a little link here. You can use the quick link, which comes with the system, or I saved myself a link for all of my projects. And I want to take a look at this top project here. So I'm just filtering down on my projects as Gus Lead. Now note, Gus Lead doesn't have, he's a lead user in the system, so he doesn't have access to edit these fields, right? But I do this for us on purpose because I want to share with folks that as customers, as we're trying to get our project folks into the system and our project leads to work and manage the system, I find it's very, very valuable that if we can show you how you can use Unanet without having to use the project manager role, hopefully get some of those folks, some of this work that's being done by our indirect folks, turn it over to our direct folks and get those project managers, those folks that are being charged onto the projects as the people who are doing this work. So this is why I share with you as the project lead, but let's go take a look at the profile. Some pieces of information that's valuable when I'm looking at resources. I want to take a look at the budget tab. I want to see how long my project is. I look like I've got a 1-year project in here. I can see that it's a cost plus effort. Now, the other thing I wanted to take a look at is I would like to be able to take a look at my labor categories and my expense types, right? Notice that as a project lead, I can't see that information. However, Ryan was so wonderful today and helped me learn a little bit about the reporting side. And so what I was able to do was run an ad hoc report. So since this webinar is not about ad hoc reports, I'm not going to go into the details on that, but I'm just going to go down to this particular project for us here. There it is, my increment project. So I can see on my increment project that these are the labor categories that I was using. So I just kind of get a little bit of a feel that without being able to see information as a project lead that I would normally see as a project manager, there's still a lot of really nice functionality within Unanet to show us how to see that information. So it's important that I know that I've got business analysts and project managers and these other two here on this particular project. That's what's going to be on there. So that's important for me to know. And we could do that same thing with the expense type to see what type of expenses that we're going to be using. Another nice way to do the expense is when we actually go to the planner, you'll see it in a second, your expense types will show up for you there, those that have been chosen by that project manager role. All right, let me show you this report, this next one about what's on contract. Let's take a look at the project accounting reports. So up here in this section, I'm going to close all these areas to keep it nice and clean for us. This revenue and funding summary report, it's in the project accounting side. Okay. Now, again, just a quick caveat, Gus is able to see this report because he's not a cost rate manager, if you saw that from his roles. However, there is a setting turned on within this particular version of Unanet that says my non-cost rate managers can view project accounting reports, the summary reports. It does not allow them to see the detail report, but they can see the summary reports, and that's an option, a property setting that you could have turned on. So that's how Gus got access to this particular report. And I have a nice saved one that I use all the time. So I'm just going to use this one for plans, and we're going to take a look at this. All projects I can see, my billable projects, this is the type that I started using in my system called billable. I want to see my open projects. I want to see beginning of time, end of time, which means everything in the system for my plans, everything that's planned in the system. And then I want to calculate it from the top budgets. That's all that's super special about here. I'm actually going to just show us this one project so we keep it really clean, this increment project. Okay. We're going to run this report. And when we run this report, we're going to be able to see that in my grid, which is, in my report, which is my plans only, there's two columns I want to share with you. If you're not familiar with these, this is really valuable information here. This to date column calculates everything that was in the criteria. So it calculates everything, in this case was BOT, EOT. That's what this column is calculating. The budgeted is that hand-typed field that a project manager or somebody with the project manager role, access to that profile tab or the budget tab, was able to type in the numbers 247,400. This backlog is the simple calculation of everything in my plans minus everything that I've budgeted, and I can see that I have 30,000 in backlog, which means I don't have enough plans, right? I'm leaving money on the table. There might be reasons that I've done that. I didn't plan all the way up to my total budget, and there might be reasons for that, but this number shows you. So when it's a black number, it means that there's more budget than there is plan. And if it's a red number, that means we're over the number. Now, the over the number is the funded value. So this is another hand-typed field in the project accounting tab that says, what is the funding value, that money that's actually in the door? And we only had 131, but we budgeted 247. This is quite probably an incrementally funded project. And you can see that I have planned more than I am funded. And there's reasons that we want to do that. We always want to have a nice, good, healthy pipeline, right? So as we're looking to try and make sure that our staff are completely optimized and utilized, we want to make sure that we know what that pipeline looks like, and you can use Unanet for that pipeline by creating plan records with that comfort factor of knowing that my plans are not going to impact the work assignments, those actual where people can get to their timesheets. All right, so we're gonna resurface that here in a little while. We're gonna look at this report a couple different times because this is a really, really nice report. When we change the criteria and look at different things, we'll be able to see some really neat information. Let's go look at the when can we start. So let's go over here to our report side, and I'm now gonna go ahead and close up that project accounting section. I'm just gonna go down here and take a look at my people section. And I just want to share with you again, we have the same report resource allocation and then the chart, same as we have up here. And again, the only difference between this section and this section is the user's access. Here you would see the information, you would not be able to drill down to the actual people. And in this section, if you had that manager role or that viewer role, you'd be able to see this report and drill down into their particular record to see what they're actually working on. All right, let's go and see what I've got here. I've got all the people I can see. Now, I know that I work in an organization called GS, my Global Services folks. That's the organization that me as Gus that I work in. I'm going to take a look at all my GSSE people. I could have chosen just to leave it as all the people I can see. We're going to run this one just full open at the moment. We're going to take a look at this by the month, maybe the current month in the next 12 months. Again, I'm just going to look at my planning records to see how well I've actually put my people in the plan. And this is my, let's see, my click through. When I click through, if I'm going to click, I want to be able to see the projects, but I also want to see the people. And maybe I'll look at the title or something to that fact. Okay. I also sometimes like to change this color so that it makes a little bit more sense for me as a project manager. And as a project manager, if my people are not 100 or are not 92% utilized, that means I don't have enough billable work for them. In my organization. In your organization, you probably have other utilization numbers or target numbers that you're working for. So for me as a project manager, if I'm underutilized, that's red for me. It's very bad to see that. So I want to know on a lot of these reports when I can use red. All right, so let's go ahead and run this particular report. So this people resource allocation report, I can see just by color-wise, very quickly, I can see that I've got a bunch of people that are overworked. You know, I must be a terrible, terrible manager. I make these people work too much. And then I have a few people that are a little bit underutilized. Right? So without even looking at more information on this, I could just use the colors alone as a visual representation on whether or not I have enough plans for my folks, right? Let's go take a look at this report a little bit differently now. Instead of looking at the plans, because we talked about those being the soft bookings, that doesn't actually impact our timesheets. Instead, let's take a look at this as on the assignments. So the assignments term here, those are those hard bookings. That's all. That's the only thing I'm changing here. And I can see that I have timesheet authorization, so to speak, for most people, and it looks like most of my people are green. I do have an issue with Greg here, but notice Greg had that capacity of 50%, so it looks like I over allocated him to stuff. So let's go see what I did. And as Greg, we can go in and look at Greg and we can see what he's working on here, and you can see that I've put him in on this this project here. I've put him in at 168 hours as a full-timer and realizing that he's a part-timer. So I made some mistakes in there, but I was able to see it by looking at his utilization. You know, when I looked at that, I'm like, wow, why is that? Why is Greg so much higher, right? So it's a nice little visualization for us here. I am going to go ahead and change the criteria since we're in here, and I don't think I look at this report. I do look at this report again, but I'm going to show you now, and we'll see it again. If I wanted to look at my actuals plus my plans, so the work that I said that they were going to do versus what they've actually done to this point, maybe I changed my actuals through date to today, and then this is a really nice feature, nice formula here, whether I want to look at my original budget that I put in, or if I want to look at my the future, the one that's what's remaining. So it's a difference in the way that the calculation works. And I'm going to run it now, and I'm going to be able to see that up through. Now notice here we've got the little plus marks, right? So these are fiat. Yeah, let me just go ahead and change this back a little bit. Alrighty, so we can see the difference between my stars, which means those are actuals, and then we can see my star plus my plus, that would be actuals and the plans, whatever's future, that which has not been charged yet. So you can see the difference there. And as you start learning about the different icons on the report, it makes it really easy to go in and look at it, and without having to drill down into the information, you can get comfortable with looking at the colors. Now, because this is a chart, I could also save the criteria, and I could, oh, actually I ran the normal one, but I could have put this on my home dashboard. And if I had ran it instead, let's go back to the report. If I had ran it as the allocation bar chart, and when I save that criteria, I could make that a really pretty one on my dashboard and on my charts dashboard, and then I could go up and see it up here. And so now I visually log in, and I put the reports that are the most important to me. I put those on my dashboards, and I can see them when I first log into the system. All right. One other piece of information to share with you here is that on my criteria for my resource allocation, the project type and the status. So keep in mind that all of your statuses, so if you're using Unanet to do your proposals, your bid projects, your proposal efforts, you can take a look at the information in here, and you can pull those projects out when you want to. So say I have all of my billable projects, and I've set all of my proposal projects and my active contract projects together. If I wanted to subset that and say just the ones that are open, so if in my organization at MICO, open means it's an active working contract, I can then, when I run it, I know for a fact that this is all real work that's inside the system. Okay, so keep that part in mind too as you're working to use these fields. These are your tables, the status and the type. Those are your tables to help you define how you want to filter and track your particular project. So I use that part as well to kind of separate between my current contracts and my proposal contracts. All righty, how are we doing on time? I think we're doing okay. All righty, I want to share with you a little bit about the difference between our planning grid. There's two ways to get to the planning grid: through the project dashboard and through the forecast dashboard. And they each provide something a little different for you. If you go through the project dashboard, right, one of the nice things about the project dashboard is that you have the opportunity to get to your plan sets. Okay, so you can do plan sets by the project. And then notice you have your grid. We have the planning grid, right? And then, of course, we could do our assignments over here. Now, the forecast dashboard, the one thing to keep in mind here is that through the project dashboard, you can only look at one project for multiple people. So you can see lots of people, but you can only use one project at a time. The forecast dashboard is really nice, and I try to show this all the time to folks. The people planner here, you can actually save your criteria and use them over and over and over again, and you can plan multiple projects and multiple periods by projects and tasks and stuff. So this side of the dashboard provides a lot more functionality for you. However, keep in mind that it uses the current plan set that you have in the system, the active plan set that's in there. You can only have one active plan set, so it'll always use the active plan set. When you're looking at particular projects and you want to work with multiple plan sets, which is our next topic, you'd want to go through the project dashboard. But let's take a look at the forecast dashboard. And I'm going to take a look at, maybe I look at all of these particular projects. You notice in my project code, I used a really neat coding system to pull up all of my contracts that are my labor projects. Okay, and I'm just going to take a look at projects only here. All righty. And that's too much information. Let's just look at this top one. There we go, a little bit easier to see. Okay, so a couple things to keep in mind here. This is the periods that I chose. I chose a semi-month period. You can choose any period increment you want, daily, weekly, semi-month, monthly, quarterly, whatever works for you. Keep in mind that once you create it, that's the period that you need to continue to work with. So it's really important in our organization that we try to make sure that we plan in a consistent period type. So if we're going to consistently use maybe semi-month, if that's what your timesheets run in, or weekly, if that's what your timesheets run in, but whatever you create it in, that's how you're going to be able to edit it later. So keep that part in mind. And when we're looking at Gus lead here, let's see, take a look at a couple different things we can do. If I want to take a look at just this one field, so say I want to put in some time for October, I can double click on Gus, and then I have some options here. I can put in the hours that I want him to have, right? I could have also done this in full-time equivalent, but this one I put in as hours. My bill rate's going to normally go on my labor category where I want it to, and notice that it already picked up my labor category from the system. So these are the derived defaults. The system tries to derive a default for you by using a couple different methods. Highly recommend that you always choose your labor category. If nothing more, always choose your labor category. It gives the most control to your project lead or your project manager to ensure that this particular period of time will be charged as a project manager at $132 an hour and not as a business analyst at $160 an hour. Okay. All right, so that's one way to do it. Another way to do it is if I knew everybody inside October, this whole period, if all these folks were going to get 8 hours a day, 8 hours, I could double click on the column and then I can give them all 8 hours. Right? Another way I can do it, I can say, you know what, Gus is going to be, I'm going to go ahead and put Gus in here as, let's see, 2 hours across the board. And that whole time frame, he's going to do it as a project manager. Notice that it fills all the way across, and that's by double clicking on the actual row. So I've shown you 3 ways: inside the cell, inside the, in the column, inside the row, and then we can also do it by the whole entire project. So the entire project, we could go over and say everybody in the project is going to get 10 hours and everything inside the grid. So it's really important that, I'm not going to save my record here, but it's really important that whatever the grid sections that you create by the periods and the number of periods, that which shows up, now you have total control, but it's within that period of time that you're working on. Okay, so a really, really neat thing about the planning grid there for you. And let's go ahead and go over to the plan sets. How are we doing? Alrighty, pretty good. All right, so I want to show you just a little bit about the plan set. So on the plan set side of the house, let's go look at my last project. I'll use my quick link to get to there. And this was that increment project that I was working on. And so multiple plan sets. So keep in mind, as a project lead, I don't have access to create new plan set names. I don't have access to add new plan sets to my project, and I don't have access to change which one is active. So if you're going to use plan sets and you're going to have project leads as a primary user to manage your project, there needs to be some coordination, some communication between that person and somebody with that access role. And it would only make sense as we're teaching and training project leads to take on more responsibility, that they would work with somebody that had more access and maybe a bigger picture of what else was going on in the organization. So Gus Lead does not have access to actually manage or modify the plan sets, but he does have access to update them inside their grid. So if I just want to take a look at my plan with grid, and I'm now at the project level, right? I can't do this from the forecast dashboard. I have to do this from the project dashboard. I now have a choice between my different plan sets. So these plan sets were put in by somebody with the project manager role. And I looked at the active one, and then this is the other one that I looked at. So I'm just going to put them here side by side for us. See, this is the second one. All right. There's a report that we can use. So I did a right click and I opened up another report. And there's a project report. Mind you, this is stuff I'm doing with the project, so I know about which section I should go to. I'm doing something with my project, and then there's this one called Plan Set Comparison Report. Okay, and I've got one I've set up here for us. All I did is I'm taking a look at my increment project. I filtered it for that particular project. I'm looking at it month over month, and I've started it last month or a couple months ago, started in February. I want to look at 12 months. And this one, I wanted to take a look at the percent margin. So in this example, without drilling into the details, I created a second scenario. And the second scenario took Gus off of some of the effort, and I changed up some hours to see if that one was going to work a little bit better for me. So I want to take a look at Plan Set 1 and Plan Set 2, right? So these are the other plan sets that might be available, but these are not set up on my project, right? And then I'm going to show the projects and show the people. I'm just going to go ahead and run the report and see what I can see here. So what I can see here is when I went in and made those changes to Gus, and I'm just looking at percentages. We're going to go back and look at it in some other ways here in a few seconds. But if I looked at his percentages, it doesn't look like I made a big, huge change in stuff. It looks like I'm going to be okay between my scenarios, between my 1 and 2 scenarios. So it doesn't look like I've done a terrible job with that. So it might be a good decision that I've done that. Instead, if I wanted to take a look at it as my total hours, right? This one might make more sense to me to see what I'm actually working on. So we can see that what I've done here looks like in July timeframe, I started shifting some of the hours, and I started moving Gus's, Gavin's hours up to Gus. Right. So when I made that change, not knowing what people's bill or cost rates are, right? Because keep in mind, I'm a project lead. I don't have access to Gavin's cost rates. I'm able to use some of these reports to see what the impact of my changes are, even though I don't have access to some of that information. Okay. Let me see if there's some other stuff I can share with you on the grid here. Oh, another neat thing that I did, just to share with you, what I did is I went to my import-export options. So I had my scenario 1, and I had the scenario 1. I just exported that, and then I turned right back around and I imported it, and I imported it into my scenario 2. So that was a really neat kind of a feature that I was able to go in. I didn't have to recreate those plans. I just brought in the scenario 1 plans, and then I was able to modify those and change those to the way that I wanted to see them. All right, actuals are coming in. Let's go take a look to see how we're actually doing with some stuff. We're going to go back to that report that I shared with you earlier. It was that under the people section. I want to take a look at the resource allocation report, and this time I want to look at the resource allocation based on how we're doing now. So let's go ahead and take a look at resource allocation. Let me see if my people are still utilized. Oh, let's see what kind of reports I can put in here. All right, so here's what makes it different now. If I wanted to look at actuals and see how well my people are doing, I can go in here. Again, I like to change my colors. And maybe for actuals, I really only want to make sure that they're like 80%. And if they go over 110, I need to know about that, right? And so now I could take a look at it from an actual standpoint, actuals only. And from here, I could go in and very quickly see that my people are over or under allocated. So I've got some folks here that are under allocated. Let me see what folks are not doing, who's not actually working. And I can see that Gus Lead and Gwen Planner don't have enough work. Now, there might be reasons for that, right? But at least I can visually see that. And I can see that poor Greg is being worked to death. Another report I'll share with you. Oh, let's take a look at one other thing. Let's take a look at from the actuals over plus the future assignments. Those assignments, of course, is that future work that people are authorized to do. And I'm going to take a look at this from the previous actuals through previous semi-month. I'm going to look at the rest of the formula, and I'm going to run that particular report. And so now I can see that from this time frame here, I now have a bunch of people that don't have enough work. I can easily go in and see there's something going on in May. And if I was to go in and take a look at this information and take a look and see what Gavin's working on, this is really nice. See it drilled into this people periodic actuals report. Now, when I click on this, I'm going to lose that original chart, but that's okay because I want to. I've got this here on bacteria, or on the criteria, and then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to say, now I want to see which project titles that we're working on, right? Which projects that were here. And now I can see here that this is this increment project. So I was able to drill in and find out exactly where Greg was working, so I can go find out why, you know, what's going on. I know where to go now. So I used the system, I used the reports that I kept drilling down until I found out what I was looking for. Another neat little report I want to share with you is this project status report. So that's a project report. So we'll go up to our projects area. And there's this status report here. Let's go to project status. And let's just take a look at that one project again, my little increment project. We'll do actuals through today from my, all right, here's the part I want to share with you. Let's just take a look at it without the notes, right? And what's nice here is I could drill into this particular report. I opened it up in a new tab so I don't lose my place, right? Don't want to lose my place. And I was able to go make some changes and make some modifications if I wanted. But instead, if I did the back to criteria and instead I use these notes and I say, show me project notes, I can now filter for the type of project notes that are relevant and important to me. Use these relative dates here, so that you're only looking at current stuff. You might want to also use this note type, and this note status is yours as a customer. You can choose what you want these to be. Maybe you have your notes that are pending actions or items that are open, and maybe you want to make sure that anything that's new you're going to take a look at. Now, I'm not exactly sure what's in here, so I'm going to go and take a look at all of it. And then I have an option to show all the descriptions, the comments, all this kind of information here. Lots of more features here. So we go ahead and run this, and now, oh, I chose a project with no notes. How did I do that? Huh. Now let's see if this other one has it. Well, it's all right. We'll make ourselves a note. All right. All right. So now we go back to our project status, and if we open up that Starbright project, and I show my notes, right? Now you can see that there's a project note. So imagine if you have a lot of project notes, all of your folks and all of your employees are putting in customer notes, they're putting in issues, they're putting in bid efforts, whatever's going on, project statuses, if there's some deliverables that are coming through, and you use that project note feature, you can now go in here and take a look at one report every day or however often you want it and have those relevant notes pop up for you. And then at that particular point, you could also open up those attachments or see those comments on there. All right. Alrighty, so my last questions here, I got about 5 minutes for us here. Is that right? About 5 minutes or so. Why do we optimize? Why do we go through all this effort? And you know, share with you folks, I've only shown you maybe 4 or 5 of the reports that are available. There are lots of reports to help us with utilization and our resources and stuff. I tried to only share a few of them with you so that we can maybe focus on those. But why do we do all of this? We go back to that triangle, right? We want to make sure that we can deliver a quality product or service, and we want to do it within our time and our scope and our costs and stuff that are available. So I want to share with you 2 reports that I use, and I teach all my project managers how to use these 2 reports. It's in the project accounting section. Okay. And I also keep in mind, I use this right side dashboard. This here is this file is called link.xml, and in the link.xml you can modify that file to add in saved shared reports that give your project manager or anybody that you want one-click access so that they don't have to learn how to run these detailed reports. Look at this report here, revenue and funding summary. If I'm trying to teach a brand new project lead how to set up a report for themselves, I could certainly create a saved report for them, but I still have to show them all of this information, set this up for them. I'm actually going to do this one on forecast. So the forecast for, in this example, what I'm saying, my forecast is actuals plus assignments and actuals through the previous semi-month, right? I'm still sharing a lot of information that a brand new project lead might not understand all of these fields. But if instead, all I had to teach my project manager is to look at these two columns, remaining funded and backlog, that's all I have to teach them is look at that. And if this number is positive and it's too positive, it's too high, then they need to go in and make some changes. This one here, those happen to be fixed price, that's not a big deal there. But this one here, this cost plus 5,000, these numbers are high. In my opinion, for corporate, this would be a high number. And if I teach you what backlog is and I teach you what remaining funded is, I've got you half the way there. But I had to show you that report, right? That big old long report. Instead, if I had a little custom link for you right over here and under a forecast, I told you to click on this link, revenue metric, it runs the exact same report. And while my people, my managers are busy working on the resources and making sure they have everybody working, that nobody's, everybody's covered down, now as a project lead, they can go in and take one button click and look at a particular report and see that they either are under, i.e. they don't have enough money, right? Their funded value is 131 and their BOT EOT is 166, so it's a negative, right? We have more work than we have funds for. Right? Keep in mind that we're looking on actuals plus assignments. So those assignments is work authorization, right? That allows people to actually charge their timesheets. So this example would be really bad. You wouldn't want $34,000 worth of at-risk money sitting out there that you have actuals plus future assignments in the total value of 166, but only at 131. So without having to get into the gory details of how to do finances and how to manage that, you can show project leads, you go do your job as to manage the resources, get them in, plan them nicely, and make sure that you don't ever create more assignments than what we have money for. They run one report, and they're able to look at one column and see very easily that they need to do something. Now, how to change it, that's actually a different webinar that talks about how to do our rebalancing and how to adjust our resources. I'm happy to share that with anybody. The other report to share with you is the cost summary and status report. So again, that's a project accounting report, cost summary and status. This is one of our 5 reports in the system that have what I think has to be one of the coolest features ever. It has this cost report functionality. And you as a customer get to define any number of possible report formats that you want here. So let me show you the one that we create for our project managers, and it's called forecast. And all forecast means is that I'm going to be showing actuals plus my budgets. These are my work assignments, people assignments, and expense budgets. I'm going to show through the previous semi-month. That's all that's special about this particular report, the way I have it set up. Right? So this is using this cost report that I call PMJSR. Right? So as you notice that these are the only fields that I'm looking at, I can quickly, so again, there's a lot of data on this field, but if I'm teaching a brand new project manager what to look for and they run this report, step 1 is you look at this field right here and you decide if that number is within corporate threshold. I told you to execute within, 2 to 3% of plan, and maybe the plan, well, what was the plan? I don't know, let's go see. If we go back to criteria and I say show what the plan is, right? Show plans and show actuals. Now, if I look at them on top of each other, and I told you to work within 2 to 3% of your plan, and you're right on plan, you're good to go. You don't have to know all the other details, but if these details are too much, we can go back to criteria and we can change this cost report to something else, right? Maybe we look at this one, this project profit one. Wow, that one's pretty intimidating. Let's go back to something else. But we can see here that we could change this into something else that was a little bit more manageable. This is the one that you're used to seeing. And I had once created a really nice report, a cost report that had 2 lines. It had revenue and profit. That was it. Those are the 2 lines that it had that made it really easy to see. So depending on who you are and what role you have in the system, how much information you need to look at, keep in mind these cost reports are very helpful and you can use them in this particular report. There's 4 other ones that you can use it in to help our project managers learn to help manage our projects. All righty. So we are almost there, folks. This was actually the attachment you saw on that note, on that project there. And I have my own flavor of a rebus. Not sure if anyone else knows what a rebus is, but I'm going to ask Ryan to see how many of our folks on the line know what this one means, all right? So let me know if anybody gets the answer. All right, took too long. Time for questions. Did we get anybody?
We had one person get it.
Yay! All right, folks. So time for questions here. I know I spoke probably too fast. Hopefully everybody was able to keep up. We do have it recorded, right? And so Ryan, how did we do with questions? Do we have anything that anybody needs to know some more about?
Yeah, we have a couple questions. And again, whatever questions we don't get to, we'll send to your CSM for follow-up after the webinar. So the first question, in the headcount report, where are the bars actually pulling from? Where's the count of people pulling from?
So in our headcount report, is that the one?
Yeah, so I think when you pulled the bar chart, if you click into that, I think that's what they're looking for.
This one here? Where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is the capacity, which has to do with people's business week. When we go to people's role, what their business week is. So that's their capacity. So keep in mind, capacity in Unanet is 8 hours a day times every work day, Monday through Friday. And Gavin is in at a one-time 40 standard business week of 40 hours. So that capacity field is coming from Gavin's person role, his person record, on the tab that says what their business week is. That would determine their capacity. This is actually really nice because this person's capacity, Greg, says it's 50. And actually, let me go ahead and log out and log in as my admin person. And we looked at this guy down here, Gavin, right? Oops, right here, business week. So Gavin is a 40-hour week person, but when we looked at Greg would have been a 20-hour week person. So this has to do, and the formula has to do with how much capacity they have. The other two fields, so this one here came from the planning records, which would have been either under the project or under the forecast. And under the people planner, oops, would have been these records under the people planner. And then the same would be true for the budget field, this one here. Budget, those are the assignments. So under the forecast dashboard, the assigner, people assigner, and expense budgeter. I'm sorry, people assigner, because that's a headcount report. Hopefully that answers that question.
Yep.
And you're down to about 4 minutes though too. I want to make sure you can share the other stuff with the folks too.
All right, we'll do 2 more quick questions.
Sure, no problem.
Are the charts and reports on the home dashboard updated automatically as the numbers change?
On the home dashboard, right. So any dashboard in the system, every time somebody hits the save button, every report is updated for the data that's inside Unanet. If you happen to have an environment that's communicating with other systems and you have an integration to other systems, I can't answer that particular question, but if the data is inside Unanet, when that save button is pushed and you refresh a page, so like if you're on this page, you would have to refresh it, but if you go from the home dashboard to the project dashboard and back, if somebody had hit submit a timesheet in that time frame, your report would have been updated.
Okay, and the last question we'll go through. If we plan in fiscal rather than calendar, how do we change the system to default to fiscal rather than changing the criteria every time?
I'm going to have to say I don't know. I don't think you can change the default. You guys on the CSM side, you guys know, can you change the default?
Well, you could just resave the criteria. If you change the criteria and then save it to your saved reports.
Right, but so you're still working with the saved report though, but like default in straight out. I guess what I'm saying is this here, this calendar versus fiscal, all of the default reports, they start at calendar. Do you know, is there any way that we know? I'm assuming that these are alphabetical. I don't know, that's a good question. Let me go ask the developers just to see. I don't think there is, but I would certainly be interested to find out. So we can mark that one and we'll make sure to follow back up with that customer.
Okay. And because we're low on time, we'll move on and we'll respond to any of the outstanding questions.
Yeah, I'm happy to help you with that. We'll get those knocked out.
Thanks, Sheila, for the great content and Q&A. Once again, the presentation will be available online in about a week. And for those of you who have questions we didn't get to, you'll see those responses soon from your CSM. Thanks for joining us and have a great day.
Thanks, Ryan. Thanks, everybody.